So week 9, or this what I'm going to talk to you about today, and it's Sunday. I apologise for just getting this done now, but as you're aware, I've been quite unwell, and particularly early in the week. But basically, we're going to talk about assessment 3. There's no PowerPoint as such because I'm going to share screen, and because I'm really just talking to what's already in the subject guide, so there was no point me doing a PowerPoint. So you will basically know that your assessment is due on the 4th of May. So just let me share my screen so we can have a look at, here we go. All right, so so the assessment is a case study. Okay, so what we're basically, your learning outcomes that the case studies related to are those 3 there. So they're basically integrating a trauma-informed framework that promotes healing and recovery into the workplace, analysing a trauma-informed framework to reduce the impact of vicarious trauma in the workplace, and identifying ethical issues and applying ethical decision-making principles to practice. It's worth 35% of your final mark, and the word count is 1,500 words. The reason we're talking about it now is that it's due on Sunday, the 4th of May, so the end of week 10. So today is the end of week 9. As I said, because it's Sunday, the 13th of April. So today is the end of week 9. So you basically have 3 weeks till it's due. Now, that might seem a long time, but just remember that you are currently now on semester break. So you won't be having to do anything as such on your course until week 10, which will begin the 28th of April. However, in saying that, you probably need to start thinking about this assessment and what you're going to do for it, because if you leave it till the beginning of week 10, you'll be rushing to get it done. In terms of the topic, so it's reducing the impacts of vicarious trauma. Okay, so we're providing you with a case study, which is very basic, but basically letting you know what you need to do. So the case study is just, as I said, fairly simple. Note things like that you're serving a diverse population with a range of needs. I think that's something to note in the case study. That this community services centre employs a team of community workers and admin staff. The centre operates in an area where many individuals have experienced various forms of trauma, such as domestic violence, substance abuse, and poverty-related stressors. At a recent staff meeting, staff raised concerns about the impact of their well-being whilst working with clients who present with trauma-related concerns. The staff discussed the concept of vicarious trauma and realised the need for implementing trauma-informed practices within the workplace to support staff. So now you've been asked by management to prepare a brief outlining what the organisation needs to consider in order to implement a policy in relation to staff care and vicarious trauma. So your task is that you're writing a brief to management about the organisation needs and what they need to implement for a staff care and vicarious trauma policy. So go to this particular link. All right, this particular link will take you to this particular document, and I think you'll find that there's a potential for lots of information in that document or this particular document that may assist you with this this assessment. When you going back here, I've got here, you can use the 5 points as guidance for your brief. So within this, the 5 points are that it's about recognising a program can't be safe for clients unless it is simultaneously safe for staff and administrators. It's about understanding that vicarious trauma is a risk which occurs in a range of settings in which staff are exposed to. And it's an occupational hazard and a cost of doing work. Ensure the organisation and its policies mitigate the risks of vicarious trauma and ensure regular clinical supervision and foster a self-care component. Now, that's a guidance for your brief. Now, the other thing is how do I write a brief? So we have a link to our how-to guides, and this gives you an idea of a briefing paper. So it goes through, it explains what a briefing paper is, and it talks about your format. Okay, your format could include, so it could be like that. Consider who you're writing this for. So you're writing it for management. So that's what its purpose is. It's for management. And so there's your tips and tricks for writing a briefing paper. So basically, it can be in any format. Okay, but it has to be logical. It has to be flowing. Okay, so think about the headings that you want to use. As I said, there's some of the recommended. There's some of the headings that you could consider, and none of them are exactly right or wrong. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. So you might start off with an introduction, and your introduction might include your background. Who knows? But that's totally up for you. As long as I'm not fussed at what your headings are, as long as it makes sense. Okay, so let's go back here and have a look. Really, it's your clarity and your flow of writing. So that's worth 15 marks. So hence why it's worth 15 marks and not 10, because it's usually only worth 10, is that we're looking for that your briefing paper is logical and specific and covers, a flow that makes sense to the reader. Okay, so remember, when I'm reading this, I'm going to be thinking that I'm a manager and you prepared me a brief. I need to be able to understand what you've done and how you've done it. So there's lots of different formats that you can use. Our how-to guide is just that. It's how you can do it, but you may have other ways of doing it that you've done it in your organisation. For example, in our organisation that I work for in my other job, outside of TAFE, we use an ISBAR format. So that's an issue, a situation, background assessment, and recommendations. Okay, that can still form a brief for management. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. As I said, as long as it follows a logical format. Always think about your rubric. Okay, your rubric's really important. And I'll at the end, I just want to mention about the rubric for the second assessment, but I'll do that at the end so we don't get confused. So the briefing paper, basically 40% is your briefing paper, staff care and vicarious trauma. Okay. And 35% are what ethical considerations that you might be thinking of in this space when you're doing it. So follow your rubric. It provides you with guidance. The other thing I wanted to mention, which was an issue probably in the first assessment and I'm going to leave that to the end too, but I want to talk more about that as well. But basically, you're looking for sources. Okay, so one of your references is going to be, or one of your sources is obviously going to be this Blue Knot document. Okay, so within this Blue Knot document, it is going to give you information now that you're going to use. So I expect to see this as a reference. Remember your in-text referencing. Okay, that wasn't greatly done by some people in the last assessment. You need in-text referencing. Okay, so use your APA 7 and you need to have your in-text referencing or in-text citations as well as your reference list at the back. We're also trying to consider what other sources that you will need and want to use. Now, I've got a few that I've found that I'm going to post up in the assessment. In our announcement section when I post a link to this recording. So there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things I had a quick look at this morning that may be useful for you to address. Now, what I wanted to say is that you will see that within here, there are in this, not there, but in this part, okay, you've got references. So these basically they're cited here, and these are the source references that have helped address this. You may want to have a look at some of these individually to help guide you, particularly like this one's easy to find, Sandra Bloom. So, have a look, and there's some on the second page there as well. Now, what goes on here as well is some other things that might help you as well. So this document overall may provide you with lots of information that will be useful to you. So as I said, have a look through it, think about what you need and what you don't need, and do that. Yeah, just what I want you to be thinking about is when you're thinking about ethical considerations, you might be thinking about things like confidentiality, consent, cultural sensitivity, dual relationships. What I mean by dual relationships are thinking about that sometimes when you're working with people that you need to have boundaries because in terms of when we're thinking about staff, there needs to be boundaries. Okay, so managers, for example, they shouldn't be providing you with counselling. Now they are part of supervision, but supervision is different to counselling. So if you're experiencing some sort of distress as a worker and you need counselling, it shouldn't be done by your manager, because even though they might be qualified to do it, that's not their job. Their job is to provide you with management guidance, which would include supervision, but supervision is a different aspect. Okay, so think about that. Confidentiality is always going to be an issue when it comes to staff. So you have to think about what those considerations might be that that need to be in place to make sure that staff feel comfortable to take up any offers or anything that's available. So think about what that looks like. Think about how all those different areas that are going to make the workplace safe for the worker and how the vicarious staff care and vicarious trauma policy might work. All right, so you need to do some of your own research as well. But as I said, you've got this source document that's in front of us now, and there'll be a few other references for you to have a look at as well. Also consider, what else are we considering? Yeah, so really just going off the last assessment. So let's talk a little bit about the last assessment now. I want to mention first off that thanks to one of you guys, identified an issue with the matrix. Okay, so the matrix, for example, when we have a look at this particular one, you can see it's pretty clear. It's 40%, 35%, and 15%. Okay, unfortunately for the first one, for the first assessment, let's go to second assessment, I should say. It wasn't quite, it was a bit confusing. Okay, so these scales here were wrong. They should have been your normal, 0 to 450 or 0 to 49, 50 to whatever, and so on. So that was and that issue is reflected also in the rubric that's in Turnitin. So if you were a little bit confused, that's why when I've marked, I've just hadn't taken any notice, I must admit, of these, and just did it on my normal basis, which would have been these percentages up the top. All right, so it hasn't impacted on your mark at all. Your mark will be what it is. Okay. So yeah, but I apologize for that. All right, so also in speaking of this assessment, again, like I said, a lot of people weren't using in-text referencing, and please do it. You didn't use additional sources. Please use additional sources to support your arguments and support what you're saying, because that will reduce your mark if you don't. There was some leniency in assessment 2, for obvious reasons, that we discovered a hiccup and that you hadn't been provided with as much information as you needed to be provided with. So there was some leniency in terms of the way that I marked. So everybody received a pretty reasonable mark. But this assessment's a different kettle of fish. Okay, you've got the information, you need to be able to do it, and your marks will reflect what the expectations are. All right, so that's really all I've got to say. I will post up those links. I'm available during the holiday period for questions. Please either email me or message me directly through Teams, whatever suits you. If need be, we can try to organise a quick catch-up face-to-face, or via Teams, I should say, if that's needed. And if there's a few of you want to do it, we can organise a quick group session. So that's available to you, fitting in with obviously all our needs in terms of around our availability. So keep that in mind if that's what you want. In terms of other things, try to have a good break, take the time to restock, but be prepared to come back for an intense 3 weeks. Okay, so the last 3 weeks gets busy. You've got lots of things going on, particularly if you're doing 2 subjects. You'll have assessments due, and we'll have a bit of content to get through to prepare you for week 4. For the 4th assessment. So really probably for the 3 weeks, for our last 3 weeks, we'll be concentrating on assessment 4 and getting you ready for that. Of course, on the 28th, let me get the dates right. So I think it's Monday the 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st. So on the 31st, 30th of April, because there's no 31st in April. So on the 30th, on the Thursday, you'll have opportunity to ask any questions about this assessment, but I'll know that you'll only have a few days before it's due. And then we'll kick off into other stuff. So that's about all from me for now. Enjoy the break, and I will touch base with you after 2 weeks if I don't hear from you before. Bye for now.